you can.
Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Thank you so much for having me. We're going to actually kick off with a little exercise that you all get to participate in. So I'm going to ask you to turn to someone next to you and tell a story of when you were growing up. Now, as I was walking here, I thought, it's not really fair if I don't have to share one of myself. So I rang my mum, and she gave me this one. That when I was about 2, my mum was ill quite a lot. And so one Sunday, this is Midwestern America, and my dad was charged with getting me ready to go to church. And I said, no, I've got this. I'm all good. I can dress myself. So we get to church, and I'm playing on the pew, and the woman behind taps my dad on the shoulder and says, "Excuse me, but your daughter isn't wearing any underpants." And so someone rushed off and made some sort of makeshift something, because it would be really horrific to have a nude 2-year-old in a Baptist, Christian, American, Midwest church. So that's mine. When I flick the switch, a timer's gonna come up. See if you can do it in 1 minute, and then we'll swap over so that the other person gets to tell the story. Get ready, find a partner, tell a story of when you were a child. So when I do this with kids in classrooms, I often ask them, how did you know if the other person was listening to you? And it's really great because they come out, they say, well, they were looking at me, they were nodding their head, they were smiling when I said something funny. And then I ask them, and how does it feel when you know someone is listening to you? And that's quite sweet. You see them sort of blush and smile, and I just take a minute to think about, for all of your experiences, there is something special when someone is listening to you. And sometimes it's even more magical when that person's never met you before. And then also on the other side, how does it feel to be sharing your story, or to learning something about someone else? Because no matter what story, even my story, quick story about the underpants, you know more about me than than you did before. So this is a really amazing way to connect. Storytelling is a core of our beings. It's what we do, and it's how we relate to each other. And so it's this idea and a few others that have led me to create Our Stories Project. And so one of our core ideas here is that every time a child asks a question or someone shares a piece of their life, there is something magical that happens. And I hope that you will have felt a tiny piece of that just in our quick exercise. The other thing that I believe is that every time we hear a story of a place, we become more connected to that place. And so I'll just give you a little overview of Our Stories Project. So our mission is connecting communities through storytelling and making local history possible. And the way we do it is we bring people together around a table to share their stories. Then we record those stories. So what we've done so far in Littleton is we've had children interview people who grew up in Littleton. That's the only requirement. So we get all sorts of people with all sorts of stories and sharing with the children. We record those stories and then we map them to locations using our app. And the stories are also available on the Christchurch City Council's Smart View app. So there's a layer of fruit trees and rubbish bins and now stories. And really the why behind it is that I just think that if we understand each other better and we understand where we've been, we're going to be much stronger going forward together and building this society that is inclusive for everyone. So I'll share with you this little story. This is Marlene. You can see she's written her name helpfully across her chest for me on this photograph. So this is Littleton Primaphore, I'm told, is what they used to be called. Now, Marlene grew up in Littleton with cerebral palsy. And when I asked her what her strongest, or when the children asked her what her strongest memory of growing up in Littleton was, she said, struggling up the hills. So she had calipers and crutches. And in some cases, her family would push her to school in a pram. And one of the stories that we have on Our Stories app is about Marlene talking about the day that her 5-year-old brother was in charge of pushing her to school. And this is what the walk to school looks like. So on this particular morning, her 5-year-old brother was not pleased with something that she'd said, and he decided to release the pram down the hill. So she slammed into this spot. Luckily, because she could have been a lot worse probably if she had gone further. But so we've taken this little memory of her life and all the empathy and understanding that comes with it, and we've mapped it to this particular spot. And if you scan that QR code, you can hear it in Marlene's voice, that story. So as I said, the stories are available on our app. We try to get them out as much channels as possible. The library is just in the process of putting them onto the canterburystories.nz app as well, or website. So really it's about collecting them and making them available. So making that local history accessible. I mean, if you think about oral history, it sounds like something that lives in down the end of a long hallway in a dusty, archive somewhere. So what we're trying to do is take that next step and make it relevant to your place. And I think next, so this is a little example of one of our stories. And if you can imagine that after you've heard this story, you might sort of see this particular place, another steep hill in Littleton in another way.
I remember seeing a baby hedgehog at the top of Wallace Road. I spent a lot of time at Wallace Road. And I was like, oh, cute. So I went to pick it up. And then, of course, it rolled into a ball and just started zooming down the hill. And I felt really bad chasing the little hedgehog down the hill. And it got stuck in the gutter. I did manage to save it and then called it Sonic. That was really nice. How fast it went down the hill. I wasn't allowed to keep it because it was gross apparently, according to my parents.
So that might not be an important part of our history, but I think you would find that I personally find that I cannot go up Bolus Road anymore without thinking about Poppy and Sonic. And it really does change my experience of that place in a really cool way. So yeah, that's a quick overview of our Stories project. We are currently awaiting funding to see if we can do another project with our Taffety School, where we'll be collecting memories of the Springbok tour, which happened 40 years ago. And then I've also got an application in with the Ministry of Culture and Heritage to try and do that on a nationwide scale, like with it digitally. So the vision for our stories is to really expand it to all sorts of communities. We're talking to Ngāti Wheki in Littleton Harbour about doing something just on the marae. And so there may be projects that you guys are working on where our stories could become a component of the work you're doing. So think about that. But also just more generally, I would encourage you to think about how you can apply storytelling to bring people together and to connect your communities. And that's it. Thank you.